The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek is a seminal work in political philosophy and economics, originally published in 1944. In this book, Hayek argues that government control over economic planning leads inevitably to tyranny and the loss of individual freedoms. He critiques the centralization of power in the hands of the state, like warning that even well-intentioned attempts to organize society through government intervention can pave the way for totalitarianism. Hayek's insights remain deeply relevant in discussions about freedom, democracy, and the role of the state in modern economies. Context and background. Friedrich Hayek, an Austrian economist and political philosopher, was a key figure in the Austrian School of Economics and one of the most influential proponents of classical liberalism in the 20th century. The Road to Serfdom was written during the tumultuous years of World War II, when the world was grappling with the rise of totalitarian regimes, particularly in Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Hayek wrote the book partly as a response to the growing trend of central planning and state control in Europe, especially in Britain, where socialism was gaining popularity. Hayek believed that many intellectuals were misguidedly advocating for socialism without understanding its inevitable consequences. Central argument: the link between economic planning and totalitarianism. At the heart of the Road to Serfdom is the argument that central economic planning inevitably leads to a loss of individual freedom and the rise of totalitarian regimes. Hayek asserts that when the government takes control of the economy by planning production, setting prices, or redistributing wealth, it concentrates too much power in the hands of a few individuals or bureaucrats. This concentration of power, according to Hayek, creates an environment ripe for authoritarianism. Hayek begins by acknowledging that economic interventionism, in the form of welfare programs and regulation, can seem appealing in the short term. It may appear to offer security and order, as well as the promise of social equality. However, Hayek argues that this approach ignores the crucial role that individual freedom and market competition play in ensuring prosperity and maintaining political freedom. One of Hayek's most important points is that no central authority can possibly possess the knowledge required to plan an economy effectively. He calls this the knowledge problem. Markets, through the actions of millions of individuals, aggregate and process information that no central planner could ever fully comprehend. This decentralized process, which Hayek refers to as the price system, allows resources to be allocated efficiently and flexibly based on the preferences and needs of society. The historical example of socialism. Hayek uses historical examples to illustrate the dangers of central planning. He points to the experience of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, where centralized economic control led to the erosion of individual freedoms and the establishment of authoritarian regimes. In these regimes, political power became concentrated in the hands of a ruling elite, which justified its authority by appealing to the need for economic efficiency and social justice. Hayek is particularly critical of the growing support for socialism in the West during the 1930s and 1940s, especially in Britain, where figures like William Beveridge were advocating for state intervention in the economy through social welfare programs. While Hayek acknowledges that such measures were intended to improve living standards and reduce inequality, he argues that they would inevitably lead to the centralization of power in government. This, in turn, would create the conditions for totalitarianism. According to Hayek, even if a democratic government initially implements economic planning with the best of intentions, it would be impossible to avoid the gradual expansion of state control. The rationale for central planning would always justify further interference in individual freedoms. Over time, as economic and political crises arose, governments would gain more power under the pretext of protecting society and ensuring stability. Ultimately, this process would undermine the foundations of democracy and freedom, leading to the rise of a dictatorial regime. Nature of freedom. One of the core themes of the Road to Serfdom is the relationship between economic freedom and political freedom. Hayek argues that economic freedom, the ability of individuals to make decisions about their work, consumption, and investments, is essential to maintaining a free society. When the state takes control of the economy, it infringes upon this freedom and begins to dictate how individuals can live their lives. In a centrally planned economy, the government becomes the arbiter of what people can produce, consume, and how they can organize their lives. Hayek also emphasizes the importance of the rule of law. In a society governed by the rule of law, individuals are free to pursue their own interests without fear of arbitrary government intervention. However, when the state takes control of economic activity, it undermines the rule of law by making decisions that benefit some groups at the expense of others. This creates a system of favoritism and cronyism, where power is used to reward political allies and punish opponents. Hayek contends that the desire for economic planning arises from the mistaken belief that government intervention can bring about order and efficiency. However, he argues that such efforts inevitably lead to inefficiency and a lack of innovation. Central planners cannot predict or control the vast complexities of a dynamic economy. Even with the best of intentions, state planning leads to the suppression of creativity and entrepreneurship, as it stifles the incentives that drive progress. Furthermore, Hayek is critical of the intellectual climate that supports planning and collectivism. He points out that many of the intellectuals and politicians advocating for socialism were often unaware of the dangers of centralization. They failed to recognize that the road to serfdom was paved with the well-intentioned policies of state intervention. The role of democracy and the importance of individual responsibility. In The Road to Serfdom, Hayek emphasizes the need for democracy, but he also warns that democracy alone is not sufficient to safeguard individual freedom. He argues that a truly democratic society must also respect the rule of law, limit government power, and protect private property. Democracy, when combined with a free market economy, allows individuals to make decisions according to their own preferences and fosters an environment of cooperation and mutual respect. Hayek stresses that individuals have a responsibility to safeguard their freedoms and resist the temptation to grant more power to the state. He argues that citizens must be vigilant against the encroachment of government control and be willing to defend their rights and liberties. Hayek also highlights the importance of cultivating a strong civil society where individuals are able to work together, solve problems, and promote their own well-being without excessive government interference. Criticism and legacy. The Road to Serfdom has been widely influential in shaping the intellectual and political landscape of the 20th century. Hayek's warning about the dangers of centralized planning resonated with many in the post-war world, particularly as countries in Europe and beyond grappled with the challenges of rebuilding their economies and political systems. The book became a rallying cry for free market advocates and a cornerstone of classical liberal thought. However, Hayek's arguments have not been without criticism. Critics of Hayek's ideas argue that he downplays the potential benefits of state intervention in the economy, especially in addressing social inequality and ensuring basic public goods. Some also contend that Hayek's vision of an unregulated market economy can lead to economic inequality and social injustice, as it places too much trust in the ability of markets to solve societal problems. Despite these criticisms, Hayek's work remains a foundational text for those who advocate for limited government, individual liberty, and free market capitalism. His ideas continue to influence debates on the role of government in economic life and the importance of protecting individual freedoms from the encroachment of state power. Friedrich Hayek's The Road to Serfdom presents a powerful and compelling argument against central economic planning and government intervention. Hayek warns that even well-intentioned policies can lead to the erosion of freedom and the rise of totalitarian regimes. His insights into the relationship between economic freedom, individual liberty, and political power remain highly relevant today, particularly in the context of debates over the role of government in managing economies and societies. While Hayek's ideas have sparked significant debate, they continue to serve as a reminder of the importance of safeguarding freedom and resisting the temptation of centralized power.